Okay, so very good evening, and we will continue with one important topic. In a way, it will be a complete, you know, gist of the last 100 years, we can say, right? Basically, we are going to look at modernism or modernist literature or the art movement and postmodernism. Okay, specifically, topic is on postmodernism, but without understanding modernism or modernist literature or art or painting, one cannot understand the postmodern literature. Okay, postmodern art, literature, etc. Right? Basically, in layman's language, 1950, Second World War till now, we are living in the age of postmodernism. Okay, so this is the term you should use for any common general in layman's language also if you discuss with someone else. Okay, because this term is known to everyone. Got it? The literary critical terms which we use, that is specifically for literary and culture studies. Yeah, but for if you discuss with the imagine someone who is from political science, sociology, public administration, or general people, the age is postmodernism, right? Basically, in simple layman's language, postmodernism because it comes after modernism. Layman's language, the period between 1900 to 1945 is known as modernism. Got it? Right? This that is the specific modernist period. Okay, modern or modernism does not mean new. Okay, not that in that sense. When we say people say that no, he's very modern. Yeah, I don't think anyone should use in that term, right? So in a way, we are going to look at that so that in a way, we would be looking at all the characteristics since the time of T.S. Eliot, I.A. Richards, New Criticism, right? All Russian formalists and all the literary development for the last first 50 years and 1950 structuralism onwards till 2000. Yeah. So in a way, we will all see all those characteristics here also. When we dealt with literary criticism, we looked at specifically how literature or art or culture can be analyzed. Now, when you look at literature as a painting, as an artist, right, as a novelist, as a dramatist, yeah. So here we have to understand how this would reflect. That is, modernism and postmodernism would reflect in or reflects in literature, yeah, or it reflects in society, yeah, and how they depict it, okay, in any art form, right? Particularly novel, poetry, etc. And we can say even films also. Okay, as far as West is concerned, the films also, if you look at the last 50 years of many films, novels, drama, which has the characteristics of postmodernism, right? Okay, but not the Indian one. Okay, very rare, very rare characteristics we have movies like that. Yeah, so let's understand so that you can see the parallel with that. Okay, that's why we have completed all structuralism, deconstruction, new historicism, gay criticism, feminine, Marxist critical perspective, because we are going to look at broadly the other thinkers, those who talked about that, right? And as a novelist and dramatist, how they expressed these sensibilities in a in their poetry, right? Okay, and of course, from where the influence has come from which discipline it has come, right? And how much impact the other discipline had on on literature. Okay, and basically we know that mostly the avant-garde, yeah, the innovations and changes happened in other discipline, right? And later it happened in literature and poetry, novel, or drama, right? Okay, so we are going to look at what were the impact of most importantly how much impact it created. Okay, that is particularly painting, right? Painting is the one discipline where the greatest innovation happened or happening also, we can see, right? If you look at all the greatest innovations, avant-garde literature, paintings, etc., it happened in particularly in painting. Got it? If you compare painting with the music, or I mean, if you compare it with literature, we can say literature is almost 50 to of 70 years, we are behind as far as innovation is concerned. Got it? I hope all of you must have heard about painting has come to the extent of, invisible painting. Yeah, and which sold for millions just 6 months ago. I hope if you update, you will know that, right? So it has come to the extent where, until now, I think no one has come, no, that there is an invisible novel. Have you heard that? Oh, I am selling you invisible novel, or invisible drama or a film. No, we have not come to that stage, right? So in that, we can assume. So we'll see how painting has developed or innovated in the last 150 years, to the extent that today you have invisible painting. So you will see landmark paintings also. I'll refer some of them, 1970s and 80s. And before that, how all these changes have happened, right? So let's understand postmodernism. To understand, let's go back to modernism, right? First, understand modernism. As I told you, general characteristics of modernism. We know that, okay, roughly 1900 to 1945 is the period of modernism or modernist literature, modernist painting, or modernist, art, whatever you may call it, right? Basically, we call modernist literature. Invariably, we refer to novelists like James Joyce, Kafka, right? Or Virginia Woolf, right? And, E.M. Foster, all of them, those who wrote during the First World War, after the First World War, and up to the Second World War, in between the World War also, right? 1919 to 1939, those 20 years also, right? What we call modernist literature, right? So we have modernist painters, music, architecture, etc., etc., right? So what was modernism? So basically, modernism is given to the movement, and within that, there are multiple movements, okay? And these movements come from painting, yeah? Starting with Impressionism and up to Fauvism, Futurism. In between, you had Dadaism, Futurism, Surrealism, okay, Imagism, Impressionist literature also. You'll see Post-Impressionist, right? There is a short video in our channel. You can see these 6 to 7 movement, right? And how they developed roughly between 1870 to 1920s, 1930s. Got it? Some of these movements might overlap. Okay, for example, Dadaism, right? Okay, so in short, when we talk about modernism or modernist literature, invariably we refer to all these art movements, right? Which dominated between, you know, up to 1900 to 1945. Okay. This specific date is given, 1910. If we go with, Virginia Woolf, in her famous essay, she says that we have to fix a date. So in that sense, we can say 1910. All right. She describes very famously, says that, by 1910, human nature has changed, right? And she has to fix that, human nature has changed, right? 1920s, she talked about that, soon after the World War, right? But that was a too early, we can say, to describe that whether human nature has changed, right? Human nature does not change. Human nature changes in, thousands of years, millions of years, we can say. The manifestation might have changed, yeah. And we already discussed in introductory session, how the 20th century technological development, and the First World War changed the outlook of the thinkers, writers, and philosophers. Got it? So that's why the specific date. Yeah. So let's look at, some of the important literature which published during this time. Okay. So these are modernist work, iconic work like James Joyce Ulysses, right? Published in 1922. It has all the characteristics of modernist literature. Wasteland by T.S. Eliot, right? The works of Virginia Woolf, right? For example, novels like To the Lighthouse or modern fiction, got it? Even the manifesto of surrealism, okay? That also has the characteristics. So that is also one of the manifesto of modernism. I mean, the modernist characteristics, okay? Multiple isms were there, right? Short movement, right? Okay. And of course, look at one famous painting, right, by Picasso, right? Guernica, famous iconic painting that also exemplify the modernist characteristics, right? And the most of the work written during the time. Got it? Okay, so you will see the modernist characteristics. Some novels have all the characteristics, some have some characteristics, right? Look at writings of James Joyce. Yeah, you will see all those characteristics. Yeah, for example, like stream of consciousness technique. Got it? And by the end of the, by 1940s, right? End of Second World War, the iconic work like Waiting for Godot has the characteristics of both modernism and postmodernism also. So we can say that is the beginning of postmodernism also, right? So we already discussed, right, how psychology, psychoanalysis, right, technological innovation between 1880 to 1910 paved the way for this World War One, right, etc., and how much it has impacted. It paved the way for the artist to look at literature differently, look at life differently. Whenever they looked life differently, so the literature also looked differently. They created literature differently. They created paintings differently. All right. So in that sense, in the midst of war, I don't think Picasso can look at life like that of Michelangelo. Definitely not, or even not like a Turner, the Romantic painter. So look at the paintings, okay? How the painting has changed. One of the very iconic painting, The Young Ladies of Avignon, painted in 1907 by Picasso, right? And of course, when after Spanish War, when it was going on, right, between First World War and Second World War, the famous painting Guernica by Picasso, right? Look at the images, right? These are not traditional paintings, okay? No one would have imagined, those who had been fed with the painting of look back, Romantic painting, neoclassical painting, old masters, right? All those Renaissance painters, Raphael, Michelangelo, Botticelli, Andrea del Sarto. You go back to the romantic, those painters, what we see, if you just look at the some of the Renaissance painters, what we get the image. In fact, some Renaissance paintings, they look so original, they look like a photograph. Can you believe? You can just Google it, see that, right? They look like exactly like a photograph. You are unable to differentiate. All right. So if you look at the history, how the painting changed, right? Because painting paved the way for these changes, right? So 1907, 1937, this is the way the painting has come. So from where it started, right? Look at going back to the iconic paintings. Yeah, Impressionism, one of the landmark, when the innovation started. Impressionism, Claude Monet's painting, 1872. I hope all of you must have heard or seen, and these are, the sun, Impressionism, sun rising early morning. Yeah, the left side you can see, and right side, post Impressionist painter like Vincent van Gogh's painting, Starry Night, 1889. Yeah, you can see the difference around 17 to 18 years. So one is Impressionism, second is post-Impressionism, right? So look at this, 1870s, roughly the changes have happened. And if you think that, okay, what happened? Why Claude Monet simply, created a different type of painting? Why didn't he follow like Turner, 1830s, 37, the Romantic painter, the very famous iconic painter, yeah, equivalent of, what William Wordsworth to Romantic literature? Why? Do you think suddenly? No, you have to understand, right? It is equivalent of asking a very simple question. Why didn't people take selfie in 1980 or in 2000? It is equivalent of that. You get the answer. The answer lies in technology. So what happened in 1870s? 1860 to 1850 to 70, photography emerged, right? Photography. Photography sometime invented around 1845, and by 1855, 60, 65, photography has become very popular. And by 1860, 65, more than 1 lakh people took photograph. And what did photography do? Photography presented a realistic picture. And till that time, people used to go and sit in front of in front of the painter and paint their paintings, right? You see that you must have seen all so many films, people would go and, they would sit for hours, right? Or when people wanted, a beautiful woman or a model or imagination, something like that, they would, hire a model, and they were models, right? Look at around the same time, 1848, 45, think of, Rossetti, those pre-Raphaelite group, yeah, how they painted, got it? Very famously, Dante Gabriel Rossetti, got it? And even before that. So they wanted realistic painting as exactly like a photograph. Now in 1860s and 70s, photography has come. Now, what is the use of photography? When the use of a painter, when the photography has come, it has replaced. So now painters have to innovate. So you can't show the realism. So it paved the way for the first impression, right? The movement. Photography can't capture that, right? So it paved the way for innovation in painting. So they gave up realism and they came to impressionism. My impression on a particular time, okay, like this iconic painting, Claude Monet's painting, Early Morning. Got it? And it is not exactly replica. Because you want a replica, go to photography. And it paved the way for, and that's why all the innovation in paintings happen. After that, they never painted anything realistic. Why the realistic you need? You need realism. Go and get a photograph, right? So they added, and we can see it has come to this way, where look at how the women are described, right? Not like that of neoclassical paintings or paintings of Renaissance, right? Because you don't need that. You need this. Because it has come to this at the backdrop of First World War and Second World War, right? The so-called traditional perception and attitude with traditional understanding has been challenged. And here, right side, you can see, you look at, you can discern what could be the meaning, right? In the midst of war, wailing, pain, suffering, death, yeah. Look at how women's bodies and everything is described, right? How we do for literature, same way a painter student might do. Got it? So in this way, painting has come. So if you go back, this is the timing. And these paintings, paved the way for all other literature like music and later architecture, etc., etc. Right? So modernism is a literary movement where the modernist literature is characterized by self-conscious break with the traditional ways of writing, both in poetry and fiction. Right? Like it's a breaking away the way how the paintings have been done. In the same way, writers, they did not want to do the same. Modernists experimented with literary form as expression, and like very famously Ezra Pound said, to make it new, right? Like as an images movement around 1912 and 13, right? So this literary movement was driven by conscious desire to overturn traditional modes, right? And why? Because the preceding changes in technology, in psychology, psychoanalysis, and the impact of First World War, Second World War, everything has changed the new sensibility, and it made people look at life differently, yeah, and started questioning the preceding literature, how they depicted the life, yeah, and many things which we took it for granted have been questioned, right? So in that sense, it was a conscious desire. Okay, it's not that simply happened, and the reasons for that also we discussed, right? So in that sense, it paved the way for new sensibility in literature. The horrors of First World War saw the prevailing assumption about society reassessed. It has paved the way for reassessment of life, because the horrors of First World War, shown the picture. Okay, it was almost a slap on humanity, right? And the writers of the time, they described that. Got it? And thinkers like Marx and Freud have already questioned the traditional narrative, as we saw in Marxist literary critical theories, right? Or like Freud questioned the whole rationality of human mind, okay, by challenging the traditional conscious understanding about mind as a consciousness or consciousness, and by bringing subconscious and unconscious to the prominence. Virginia Woolf, who declared that human nature underwent a fundamental change on or about December 1910. Okay, there's nothing happened on that day. Particularly, she says that we had to select a day. That's why we could select the year 1910. And the characteristics of modernist literature can be seen even in the earlier works like Alfred Jerry's Ubroy, Joseph Conrad's novel Heart of Darkness, where some of the earliest examples of modernist literature. So the Poets of Images movement founded Ezra Pound in 1912, okay, gave a new way of poetic style. Got it? It gave modernism, the 20th century, were characterized by poetry that favored precision of imagery, brevity, and free verse. As far as literature is concerned, free verse and brevity and imagery, exactness, right? So in a way, it paved the way for this kind of innovations, right? So what are the characteristics of this modernist literature or modernism, as we call, literature, right? These 30 to 40 years, right? So we have, as I told you, there are different isms in painting, and the impact of that was felt in literature also, like Cubism, Dadaism, Surrealism, Futurism, Fauvism, before that, Post-Impressionism, before that, Impressionism. So you take 1870 to 1930, 35. Got it? And art was never the same. Yeah, we are talking about what happened some 70 years before. After 1950 till today, you'll be shocked to know the paintings. Yeah, got it? So today, the paintings, it's not that, you go and, paint with the green color picture and color and paint, all that have changed completely, right? So we'll see some symptoms of how the paintings have, changed, okay, innovated. So as I told you, it has come to the extent that today you have invisible painting. Got it? So in that sense, what are the characteristics of, modernist literature? One of the important characteristics, what we see in most of these novels, poetry, drama, right? Like iconic work like take James Joyce, Ulysses, or T.S. Eliot's Wasteland, fragmentation, right? So they see life as a fragmentation, the state of process of breaking into smaller parts, right? And in what? In plot, character, theme, images, overall storytelling. Right? So these kind of, you know, in everything, the fragmentation, right? It paved the way for typical, and it has, in a way, in that sense, most of these work were almost questioned even linear sequence, right? Linear narratives, right? The way how literature was. Why? Life was not linear. Life was not in sequence. Got it? One of the important themes of modernist work were loss. Okay. After the First World War, the loss was the major theme. Yeah, as far as theme is concerned. You look at the works written during First World War to Second World War up to the end of that, right? Got it? Even take European writers of the period. Take Kafka, right? Kafka's work, you can see. Take Metamorphosis, right? Take In Between, it paved the way for, those absurd writers, right? Okay. Or those who later became like a, existentials, right? Albert Camus, right? Albert Camus' Stranger around 1929-30. You can see the same. Truth. The truth is questionable for modernist, right? As a common theme, that you cannot always trust the narrator to tell the truth, whereas in the traditional literature, it's the narrator's job to make the reader understand what is going on. Going back the preceding, Thomas Hardy, George Eliot, Dickens, Jane Austen, all of them, they were the narrator. They are describing, author was the center, he was the authority, right? Here, they have started questioning the narration, right? What is truth? Yeah, that is. Next one, destruction of family unit. Most of the work describe that because the very definition of family, etc., has been challenged by the events of the time, like First World War. First World War destroyed the concept of family, right? Because till that time you have people assume that family means husband, wife, children, and all those definitions. And now after the First World War, you see the streets are filled with people, either they lost their husband or wife, and even if there are husbands are there, most of them are amputated, because you know most of the that, right? Almost 25 to 30 to 45 percentage of European youth were wiped out in the First World War. Got it? And you imagine, you are going to write a love story where husband and wife are perfect, but you see the all the street, either the husband is missing or husband is amputated, bedridden. What kind of imagination you will have, right? So the destruction, you'll see that kind of characters. Characters may be given little or no physical description, and one or more characters, usually an outcast, right? Description you can't give because the image has been challenged. Authority figures are often untrustworthy, reflecting the question of truth, right? So they started questioning who tells the truth, whose perspective, whose narratives, right? Unlike the Victorian literature, right? Victorian literature was the idyllic one. You won't find sea of changes between Jane Austen to Thomas Hardy, yeah, up to at least 1880s. Yeah, the first novels of, the earliest novels of Jane Austen, you won't see, sorry, Thomas Hardy, you won't see much changes. For example, take, Return of the Native, novels like Far from the Madding Crowd, okay, or, Mayor of Casterbridge, all written during 1870s and 80s, right? But later you see the last novels, you see the changes. Got it? Like Tess of the D'Iberville or Jude the Obscure. So again, we have to understand why. Why there is a sea change in Thomas Hardy? You take Far from the Madding Crowd, 1872, 1895, Jude the Obscure. Completely different. We can't even believe that, oh, Thomas Hardy wrote these novels. So what happened? That is what we have to understand. So that was a different time, Victorian literature, yeah, where there is a centralized third person narrator, yeah, and we believe the author, whoever the author or the narrator is, even if the narrator is a particular character, we believe them. All right, whether the narrator was Pip, or the whether narrator was Oliver Twist, or the whether narrator was Dorothea, or any one of those novels, Dorothea of Middlemarch, or you know Elizabeth of Jane, of Pride and Prejudice. All right, so the 20th century, all these have been challenged, right? The reversal of traditional roles, right? Now the roles have been reversed. Why? Because in reality, roles have been reversed. Man is not, not is the man is not the only breadwinner today, because First World War has liberated Western women, right? European women, they came out of the closet, because men went to the frontier to fight. Women started coming out between, and that is the blessing in disguise. Okay, it liberated Western women. They started coming and working out in factories, offices, etc., etc., right? Okay, and in that sense, in the next 20 years also it continued, and till the onset of Second World War. So in that sense, role reversal happened. Before that, man was the breadwinner. He is the authority. He is the father figure. He is the, the so-called, the owner or the head of the family. Ambiguous ending, right? A typical characteristics of modernist work, and even in postmodern work, ambiguous ending. Sometimes no ending also. Such work often leave a lot of question with the reader. They don't tie up everything for you, for the reader, right? They just leave many things unanswered. Got it? Okay, unambiguous ending or multiple endings, right? Multiple endings. And that characteristic we see particularly more in postmodern works, where there are two endings, three endings also, right? Often the setting is often more than just setting. Got it? It cannot be the physical setting sometime. Okay, sometime it could be desolate, like works like, even though it has the characteristics mode of postmodernism, like for example take Castle, okay, of Kafka's Castle, or Stranger of Albert Camus, or that of Waiting for Godot, right? The use of improper grammar to reflect dialect, that's also language too. Improper grammar, dialect, etc. The traditional, the RP English was challenged. More sexuality and use of intertextuality are often found, right? More sexuality. Now the liberation happened, yeah, and invariably women they started coming out, and all it led to multiple relationship, etc., etc. Yeah, think of wasteland, how Eliot describes, okay, after first World War, right? That's why he says that world has become waste. Even one of the element is sexuality, freedom, brothels, sexuality, all such issues. Intertextuality, allusions, right? Though at the time during 1920s and 30s, intertextuality was not used, it was allusion, right? Take Eliot's work, Wasteland, it had allusion, right? It has references of more than 70 to 80 works. Got it? It was so, there were so many allusions that he had to write a footnotes, a kind of a, in the second edition of the Wasteland, because he had to explain. Got it? Whether this poem has the allusion of, whether John Donne's poem, or, Edmund Spenser's Prothalamion, okay, or any other work, right? Like that. More use of first person narrative reflecting the lack of universal truth, okay? So there is only individual truth. So no more third person narratives. Most of them were in a first person narrative. So the person is presenting his perspective. And melody and harmony were put aside in music, if you see, even in music. Perspective and direct pictorial representation were abandoned in painting in favor of degree of abstraction, as far as painting is concerned, right? So painting, it was almost, very great innovation. Painting, and it paved the way for music also. Got it? Even music, if you see that, okay, one of the characteristics of postmodern music around 1950s itself, right? I think I shared with some of you, right? You can see very 433. There is a famous, piano for 433, 4 minute 33 second. There's no music. The artist would come, open his piano, sit silently. In between, he would do one thing. Then he was 433. After 4 minutes 33 second, he will close down his piano and move away. That is the music, right? To understand that music, or for that understanding, can there be invisible painting? First, understand postmodernism. If you dissect and understand postmodernism completely, then you will say that, yes, there can be a painting. There can be a music without music also. The so-called without traditional understanding of music, okay? So in architecture, traditional forms and materials were give way for the new forms of buildings, architecture we see, right? Pictured roofs, domes and columns, woods and bricks were rejected in favor of plain geometrical forms, right? Of buildings with the glass and concrete, right? All those today's glass and concrete and steel buildings what we see today, right? 1920s 30s itself, right? By 1930s, this elevator was invented, so it paved the way for skyscrapers, right? And all these these glass buildings what we see, the changes have come. So painting, music, and architecture, great changes have happened, right? And all these have influenced even literature. Some of the important writers of modernist, right, we can see the characteristics in them, like T.S. Eliot, James Joyce, Ezra Pound, right? Virginia Woolf, Wallace Stevens, Gertrude Stein, Marcel Proust, Stephen Mallarmé, Andre Gide, Kafka, or even Rainer Maria Rilke, right? Some of them are French and other writers. Got it? One of the important characteristics of modernist was stream of consciousness technique, right? It became popular as psychoanalysis became popular, right? So psychoanalysis of Sigmund Freud paved the way for, stream of consciousness technique, right? Started by Dorothy Richardson and later James Joyce, Virginia Woolf. They popularized this technique, right? The consciousness, right? A blurring of distinction between genres, right? Blurring of distinction between genres, so that novels tend to become more lyrical and poetic. For instance, the poems became like documentary and prose-like. Thus, modernism originated from the corruption, decadence, and frustration of post-World War psyche of Western people, right? So the Western society or the people of its impact, so the characteristics can be seen in the next 30 years during First World War, second, and between the First World War and Second World War, and up to the end of the century. Got it? Okay. right? So to understand modern postmodernism, so these are the characteristics. Now, postmodernism usually refers to 1945 to till today. Okay, right? So first look at exactly, as far as architecture is concerned, someone described that this is the exact day we can say there is a shift from modernism to postmodernism. Got it? That was, generally accepted date is 1970, but the characteristics can be seen even before that in literature, at least 19, as I told you, Waiting for Godot and 1950s and 60s, many novels were written. Yeah, got it. But as far as, this term overall, overall, whether postmodernism in generic sense, right? According to Charles Jenks, he suggests that end of modernism happened in architecture when a very famous building was demolished. Okay, and that date is, Saint on in Saint Louis on July 15th, 1972 at 3:32 p.m. Got it? We'll see that what happened that day. But overall, this word postmodernism was coined by Arnold Toynbee, but exactly he's not the person who coined it. Okay, before that, someone else, right? The person who really coined it, but Arnold Toynbee popularized it, right? The historian. This is, the one famous, building. You can see the left side. Okay, this is the, Purut Agio, Purut Agio public housing project, okay, in St. Louis. And it was one of the worst project they ever created. Okay, and it was detonated and, blown away. You can see the right side images when it was detonated. Yeah, this building typically represents modernist building, and with that they say it is the end of modernism, right? And this, it was a complete failure in that sense, okay, as far as architecture. So they wanted a date, so accordingly the famous pan man has described this, demolition of these building as this whole apartment, okay, this housing society as the date, right? Post-modern condition. Now the next 50 years, okay, till today we can say last 70 to 75 years or last 50 years from 1950 onwards is the characteristics of postmodern condition. One of the important thinkers was Jean Francis Lyotard. We'll come back to literature, okay, literature part and literature, what kind of a characteristics and what kind of, techniques are used, right? But before that, understand one of the important thinker like John Francis Lyotard, okay, who challenged that postmodernism, is says that it is opposed to, all those universal and meta narratives and common universal ideas, right? Postmodernism basically challenges that, right? Okay, that's why he says that it is the breaking of meta narratives, grand narratives, universal narratives. What are universal narratives, grand narratives? Are those thinking and thought, and the philosophies which we believed for a long time that those are universal, right? Okay, and I told you in introductory class itself, in the last 50 years, we are questioning many things of last 400 years actually. We are questioning since, Renaissance time. Got it? But we can excuse Renaissance people, right? So we are questioning the ideas of Renaissance and, all these Enlightenment thinkers and even, the last 400 years. Got it? And we are challenging some of these, right? That's why they say that it challenges those universal ideas, that meta narratives. Got it? These kind of ideas, when any idea, okay, any idea, if you say that, no, this is universal. Got it? This is universal. It happened in West. It happened in America. It happened there. It would happen here also. No, right? So now we are living in a postmodern era. We have to question those narratives, those values. Whose values are they, right? Even every field, okay, I would say, people say that even GST, look at, what the havoc it has done on our Indian economy. Got it? If you know something about that, you can do the research. You can go and find out how many, how difficult it has, made people to do business, right? Yeah, it is okay for developed countries like France, from where GST and all other developed country, right? But what about the country where, 80% of business are in MSME? Got it? Right? It has, and with the COVID, we know that last 5 years, right? Lakhs of business have been closed. So you can't implement GST, ditto from West, you take it and you do it. Same way, any idea, got it? If it happened, imagine if you started applying, same grand narratives, grand ideas, okay, got it? So it is questioning of those narratives, right? It is universal, okay? If you take feminism, can we take feministic ideas of Western society, radical feminism, can you implement here? Got it? Okay. Can you implement, many of those, okay? Even there is a marital rape, yeah. But the idea is that there are many good aspects also we are not ready to implement, right? So in a way, it questions. No one questions, that those ideas have worked. But are you ready to make it a local and mini narratives? Are you ready to tweak it to make it suitable for the particular culture, particular time, particular place, and in this way? So nothing is universal. This is what Lyotard says. That's why breaking of meta narratives, okay, meta narratives, meta ideas, universal ideas like liberalism, Marxism, and different isms. He is fiercely critical of many of the universalist claim of enlightenment, even the ideas of enlightenment. Got it? Long ideas, as I told you, from discipline to punctuality to honor to truth to celibacy to virginity to many things they have propagated, right? And most of them, the impact was so much that even today we believe fundamentally many of those. Got it? Yeah. And those tragedies that those things are propagated as if virtue, and they linked it with religion. Okay, once personality and once spiritualism also. Got it? Okay. Take for example, like you're keeping fasting. What does fast to do with religious rituals, etc.? Nothing, right? How they linked it, how sexuality has been linked with religion and morality. What is sex to do with that, right? Again, the same. Tragedy is that these ideas are different from men. These ideas were different from men, full of neoclassical and, Victorian men. Got it? And iconic words have been created, okay? Euphemistic words, right? You look at, women, those who have multiple relationships, what kind of words they have created, and men, those who had these kind of, relationship, what kind of words they have created, right? Okay, you can see charming personality to Casanova to etc etc, right? You go back, take the literature and the overall narratives of 17th to 18th century, 19th century. That's the way they described, yeah. And women, those who had these kind of things, and what kind of a narrative they propagated, and what happened to them in real life, and how they are described in that sense, right? And how literature and different art forms and other, today we can say from songs to films, have promoted that, right? So they question the fundamental narratives. In a way, they question that the fundamental narratives of a fixing a woman's character with a sexuality, yeah, or in her body, right? So like the ideas like discipline or truth and honor, and the list is endless, right? So we have to question that. Postmodernists are questioning. Yeah, who decided that, right? And if you deconstruct it, you can see that it benefits a particular group, right? As I told you, from policeman, why policeman wants you to be very disciplined in road, because it benefits him. Why the professor wants you to be disciplined in a college, because it benefits him. Yeah, right. Imagine all the students, if they are not disciplined, what will happen to those 10, 20, 100 professors, right? So professors, they want their work to be done very easily. The ideology is promoted that one should be disciplined, one should be punctual. Why punctual? If you're not punctual, professor will have a lot of problem, right? It is equivalent of that. If you don't wear helmet, the traffic movement will have multiple problem, right? So to solve their problem, they speak like that, right? As we saw in Marxist literary critical theories. So in a way, we have to understand whose ideology, whose virtues are these. Postmodernism make us question those narratives. In analyzing the conditions of legitimation of knowledge in contemporary science, Lyotard defines postmodernism as a incredulity towards meta-narrative. Iconic famous line, please memorize it, okay? Incredulity means you're doubting the credibility, yeah, about these meta narratives. He argues that we do not establish stable language element, the relationship between narrative and knowledge. And there is many different language games, a heterogeneity of element which only give rise to institutions in patches. And what is needed is a localized language, knowledge. That's why Lyotard is skeptical of modern cultural thought. So in 1979, he wrote the very famous book, The Postmodern Condition, a report on knowledge. Okay, please memorize it. Don't forget that. The impact of postmodern condition was provoke skepticism about universalizing theories. Okay, universalizing theories. Nothing, no theories are universalizing. Take feminism. You can't say that the feminism which West talks about you are going to implement now. No, our women, they need economic freedom first. We are 150 years backward, right? So there can be multiple feminism within India. You will have a different feminism in Dindigul. You will have a different feminism in, in a small town or in a metro city, or even the elites of metro, they will have a different feminism. You can't take the Western feminism and implement here. All right? That Western women are fighting for abortion rights, for pornography, and for, many other, same-sex marriage. Come on. They, on 150 years, they fought for something else, right? Got it? So first give that, give the basics, right? So whatever the idea, so it questions these universalizing theories, right? Irrespective of the area, right? And we can see that in real life, no? Because, because what would happen if you go like that, you would be left behind in many things, right? And India is a typical example of that, got it? Where we see this kind lopsided development, right? So in a way, country like India, where we will find the basic necessity of life is not given, but the other side you have so many other things, right? We don't have many toilet, but more smartphones and television, right? We have all these luxury goods and all this consumerism one side, but we have so many other things. The very basic things are lacking, right? From sanitation to medicine to formal universal health care and education and basic job and other things. Yeah, all right. So in a way, we have a situation like that. You won't find those situation in the Western developed countries where a person stays in slum but using iPhone, all right, and watching OTTV. This is the way of, because we have implemented those universal things, the so-called trickle down other theories. So in the same thing can be applied in commerce and economics also, right? So he's not saying for literature. Remember that for everywhere, this universalizing has to be questioned. Lyotard argues that we have outgrown our needs for meta-narrative due to the advancement of techniques and technology since World War I, since World War II. A loss of faith in meta-narrative has, an effect on how we view science, art, and literature. We have to question that. Little narratives have become appropriate today, right? So what is needed is little narratives, mini narratives, local narratives. Postmodernism is the term used to suggest a reaction or a response to modernism, what happened in the preceding 100 years, that is 50 years. So postmodernism can only be understood in relation to modernism. At its core, postmodernism rejects that what modernism champions, right? So it rejects many of the tenets and characteristics of postmodernism, please remember, okay? But it has so many characteristics of postmodernism also, sorry, modernism also, right? So it's not that it has completely abandoned some of the characteristics, right? For example, non-linear narratives. So many things you will find those, but one thing in which postmodernism differs from modernism is its attitude. Okay, the attitude of postmodernism than that of modernism. So while postmodernism seems very much like modernism, the what differs from modernism is its attitude towards it, right? In simple layman's language, look at the writing of 1910, 20, 30, 40, all those writers from T.S. Eliot Wasteland, Ulysses, Kafka's Metamorphosis to, all these, the writers, those who wrote. What is the attitude we get? They feel that, world has become wasteland, right? Yeah. As if, Victorian age or neoclassical age or Elizabethan age or the Punic time, The world was great, excellent. Now we have horrors of World War has created the world as a worst place. Yeah. So there's a nostalgia, okay? Modernist writers have a nostalgia for the past. You read W.B. Yeats, you'll see, okay, as I told you, Byzantium, going back to the past. Wasteland has a complete nostalgia. That's why it has 75 allusions, right? Even Dante's Divine Comedy, it has allusion. Okay, look at, how Wasteland, T.S. Eliot compares the London, the river Thames. Yeah, he describes 20th century river Thames, boating is going on, prostitution is going on. He compares that to the same river 500 years ago, how Edmund Spenser described in Prothalamion, right? Where the twin daughters of Earl of Worcester's marriage was going on, a sacred thing. So he gives a fragmentation. He gives two images. Look at that image, this image. You get the meaning, right? So there's a nostalgia, okay, going back. All modernist writers, you have a nostalgia. Take novels like, Hemingway's work, right? Read like, Farewell to Arms, right? All the works of the period, right? Even Albert Camus and others, got it? In postmodernism, you don't have that nostalgia, right? I'll come back to the iconic line of postmodernism, right? So modernism, for example, tend to present fragmented view of human subjectivity and history, but present the fragmentation as something tragic. They describe it as something tragic. It has to be lamented. There's a loss. Read Kafka's, Metamorphosis. What is the image we get? Oh, look at, how the man has been converted. Man has become like an insect. Got it? So we get the feeling, oh, this is the deterioration man happened to man, right? Take Stranger. Yeah, the very first line of Stranger, Albert Camus' novel, it says, "Oh, mother died yesterday or day before yesterday. I don't know." We are told, "Oh, look at this. This man. Look at how careless this man is, right? When he receives the telegram of his mother's death." Yeah, compare invariably the comparison with the past. Look at how people were there, and we had a list of all this literature, we have Victorian literature, right? Neoclassical literature, Elizabethan literature, particularly look at Victorian literature, how it glorified those, the pristine time. Yeah. When you get into the world of, George Eliot or Thomas Hardy or Elizabeth Gaskell, okay, or Jane Austen or Bronte sisters, right? A very pristine one, okay? Yeah, not at all worried about what was going on, right? Cut off from the whole world, right? You can see that. All right. Though at that அந்த டைம்ல சேஞ்சஸ் நடந்துட்டு இருந்திருக்கு. Changes were happening, like railway was there, etc. Right. So for modernist, it has to be mourned. There is a loss, and the World War aggravated that. Okay, so like modernists, postmodernism also believe that view that there is no absolute truth, and truth is very relative, right? Truth is very relative one. There is no absolute truth. So postmodernism has said that truth is not mirrored in human understanding of it, but rather constructed as the mind tries to understand, right? This is what post deconstruction said, no? All right. You have to create your own truth, right? You have to create your own image. There is no universal, right? So it is, one has to create that, right? There's nothing universal. It is very relative. There's no universal truth. How you define the narrative is there. You can call a terrorist as a terrorist, and you can call terrorist as a freedom fighter. Got it? It's all about definition, right? The person whom you call terrorist, the Pakistanis might call him as a freedom fighter. Okay, as we did, even to your own LTT. Got it? That is that simple narrative. Yeah. So postmodernism works such as Waiting for Godot. There are no such thing like absolute truth. All things are relative here, right? So it's a typical example like, Waiting for Godot. Whereas modernism plays, faith in the ideas, values, and belief, and culture norms of the West. They believed all those grand narratives, right? Okay, since it has been taught. So modernism emphasized on that. Postmodernists question such narratives. They question Western values, and they say that those values and narration, whatever you describe, are particularly, for particular culture, particular West and ideas. It is not universal, right? Okay. So modernism attempt to reveal profound truth of experience and life. Postmodernism is suspicious of very profound. What is profound? It's question that. right? Look at, going back, like, modernists, imagine, they talked about liberty. For a long time, they talked about liberty, equality, fraternity, etc., right? Okay, they talked about virginity, chastity. But whose chastity are you talking about? You were talking about chastity and you imposed those on women, right? And all our novels describe that. All our narrative, all our, archives describe that. You called chastity, you imposed it on women. Men had been doing all this, Casanova activity for the whole years. You glorified them. You read the novel like, Jane Eyre. See the Rochester's character, right? How it has been glorified. Okay, you can see the trend, right? He had girlfriends, he had past relationship, he goes for having a good time, or that famous palace, he leaves. Often he goes for to the European, resorts and other things to enjoy his life. Okay, you need read the narrative, you'll find, and it has been glorified. Got it? Take same way many of these Jane Austen's novel, you'll find the characters. Got it? And these ideas were imposed on women. And liberty, we were talking about liberty for 200 years, but the whole time you had a whole of, slavery, right? The whole slavery, whole colonial countries for 200 years. So whose ideas, whose values they talk about? So postmodernists question the narrative of these 17th, 18th century Enlightenment thinkers like Rousseau, Marx, sorry, not Marx, Rousseau, Montesquieu, Hegel, Kant, right? When they talked about this grand narrative. Voltaire, look at, when Rousseau says man is born freedom, which paved the way for American and French Revolution, right? So they said, who described this? These are profound. These are the ideas which you created to impose your definition of everything on the other. Got it? And there's nothing to loss, okay? All this, whatever you believe, that no modernists believe that no loss has happened, right? Man was like this, man has come to this stage, okay? Man was once great. Postmodernists say that no, man was always like that. Man was always brute. Man was always crude. You have created the false image of the past. They question even the past narrative. நம்ம ஊர்ல இருக்காங்கல்ல, oh, gold, India had a golden time. Man was once like that. Women had like that. Mahabharat time le எப்படி இருந்தாங்க. All those are kada, right? You are glorifying. If you go down in history, it would be more worse actually. So they question this whole narrative, right? These are the false narratives you have created so that you can have hegemonic power, right? Because what we see the whole 16th to 19th century, they talked about all these ideas, but that itself was not implemented on Western women or Western and other culture, right? So whose values they talk about, they question this whole profoundness, right? And there is nothing to feel nostalgia or loss. Got it? Okay. Postmodernist, modernist is like that. Now I give the example in my class, I had a brother, once he used to come, okay, 20 years ago, right? He used to come to metropolitan city like Chennai, used to feel, oh, what is this city where people are eating, a roadside bonda bhaji in dust, using newspaper, to remove the, oil from, the samosa or the bhaji. They drink water in, that 10 rupee, that 1 rupee water sachet. You remember that they used to be till 2005 and 6. Okay. Those who were in Chennai, those right? Water packet la varum thanni. Yeah, he used to condemn. He used to criticize that because at the time he used to come once in 1 year during vacation. And 20, 30 days irupar condemn pantu poirvaru. Because he lived in a very pristine place. Yeah. But as time went on, he came and every day he came and in the last 15, 20 years, today he does not, mourn. He does not criticize. He accepted it. Yeah. He does not talk about that. So postmodernism is like that. Postmodernism celebrate all these. This is the way. So in a way, postmodernists, in a way, they say that here, even they question the narrative of the past. That human beings were like this only even in the past. But you have not shown the reality. You have not shown the reality because it was not possible for a writer to show the reality because the access itself was not there, right? So he says that maybe in French Revolution or American Revolution, more atrocities might have happened, but there was no photography, there was no telegram, there was no, Norse code, or there was no video camera to give the live telecast. Unlike that of First World War, or Second World War, because here you get everything, right? And even during Mahabharata or Ramayana or, Homer's Iliad's time, people must have fought like this only. But the man who wrote those narratives must have, did that through his imagination, right? Because he wrote through imagination, because what he could perceive and understand was very limited one, right? He did not have, right? Take American Revolution in 1775, or American, War of Independence, Civil War, 1865. Yeah, 1865 American Civil War is also glorified. Why? Again, it was called the chivalry. Look back, all 2000 years of, chivalry, bravery, adichiruvom, kuthiruvom, manliness, this whole manliness was promoted, right? All our literature, film. And that's a tragedy that even today, yeah, this definition of manliness, man irukkan and the தைரியம், இன்னைக்கு ஒரு பெரிய group அதில் தான் வாழ்ந்துட்டு இருக்கு. That's why all these, movies like all goat, take all your RRR, all Pushpa, all such movies, they do, because they want that. Yeah, because this chivalry, once, crusades, kings used to do that. Think of Robin Hood and others. Take the Game of Thrones. It has been promoted, manliness. Yeah. So postmodernists question every such narratives, right? Whereas modernists focused on central theme and united vision of particular piece of literature, postmodernists see human experience as unstable, eternally contradictory. There's a lot of contradictions, ambiguous, inconclusive, indeterminate, unfinished, fragmented, and jagged. There's no reality. This is the way. Look at all these characteristics are post-structuralist and deconstruction of the characteristics. Yeah. So invariably, when I imagine 1970s and 80s, like those who were writing novel, you have to write a novel like that. You can't write a novel like, Thomas Hardy or Jane Austen. Once upon a time, there was a man. No. So that's why we have novels like iconic novels like, take, for example, French Lieutenant's Women, John Fall's novel, very famous novel, right? 1969. And of course, I'm going to show you the list of, postmodern novels, right? If you see postmodern novels, they show us the reality. This is the way the life is, right? So what about painting? So we can see, we don't have time to discuss a lot of paintings. I'm just showing you some of the innovation. Look at 1980s and 70s, like painting has come in the stage. Look at, right? Picasso the time in 1920, 30, 40. Look at the time of 19 postmodern painting or example, right? There are many. Look at 1980s painting. They are not traditional paintings. Look at, they are installation painting. Painting என்ன இருக்கு? ஒரு ரூம்ல ஒரு 21 stones ஒரு slabs வச்சிருக்காங்க. Look at that. And remember, அதுல symbol, motif எல்லாமே இருக்கு, theme. Yeah, அந்த ஸ்லாப்ல மண்ணு எங்க இருக்கு, எந்த டைரக்ஷன்ல இருக்கு, எங்க லைட் படுது படல, அதேதான். Right? And that's a very iconic painting. Remember that, okay? All these are sold in millions, right? End of the 20th century, okay? 1983 by Joseph Beuys. And right side, look at 1990, Martin Kappenberg's famous painting, Heavy Bushy. What is this? It's looked like a collage. Multiple paintings குப்பையில போட்ட மாதிரி இருக்கிறது தான் painting, right? இப்போ இதை இன்டர்பிரிட்டேஷன் படிக்கிறதுனா எடுத்து பாருங்க, லைக் ஹேம்லெட்டை இன்டர்பிரேட் பண்ற மாதிரி உங்களுக்கு இருக்கும், ரைட்? அந்த டைரக்ஷன் எப்படி இருக்கு, அந்த பெயிண்டிங்ஸ் how it has been arranged, and you can see at the wall that side, so many individual paintings, all have a meaning. Yeah. And இதோட innovation painting have come, right? If you go to Tate Gallery, you will see the painting, installation painting. All right. If you go to Tate Gallery, there's a one painting, they say that, simple. ஒரு ரூம்ல போனீங்கன்னா லைட் ஆன் ஆகும், ஆஃப் ஆகும், அதான் பெயிண்டிங். இன்னொரு ரூம்ல பீப்புள் வுட் பி ரன்னிங். நீங்க போய் சுத்தி பார்த்து வந்துடுவீங்க, வேர் எங்கப்பா பெயிண்டிங் இல்லை, someone will tell you, இந்த ஓடுனாங்கல்ல, you will be seeing people would be running there. I don't have time to show all those paintings, okay? If possible, I'll send you the link, right? You will see that those people, those who were running, they are the painting, right? If you come with a traditional mindset, you will know, oh, how can this be painting? Yeah. But remember that my definition of house, I told you, you should be able to accept, right? So when we come to the conclusion, we'll be able to see that, right? So these are some of the landmarks. So this way, Painting also, the innovations were going on. This is 1980s. Today, the time has come for invisible painting. So some of the iconic writers of, postmodern writers are like Thomas Berger, Richard Brongton, Don DiDillo. I hope you know the most of the names. William Gaddis, Vladimir Nabokov, Thomas Pynchon, Peter Ackroyd, Angela Carter, Salman Rushdie, or Umberto Eco. There are lists so many. Okay, if you note down at least. In fact, all the writers, those who are writing since 1950, he or she has to be postmodern. Okay, right? But there are very iconic novels are there. Okay, the list which have completely challenged our understanding of literature. Okay, or our understanding of life itself. Whereas modern authors guide and control the reader's response to their work, postmodern writers create open work in which the reader must apply his own meaning, his own connection, his own understanding and interpretation. Think of death of the author. Think of deconstruction, right? Postmodernist does not care ground zero in its framework through traditional does. There is no predetermined rules, well established and long term principle. Events, activities, thoughts, and manner do not exist for long time in postmodernism. All of these issues are subject to change, unlike traditionalism. So postmodernism argues that there is no absolute truth in universe, right? So some of the very famous novels, like look at the like Jack Kerouac's novel On the Road, one of the earliest one, 1957. Naked Lunch, another famous novel by William S. Burroughs. Tim Drum by Gunter Grass. And this is very famous one. I hope everyone must be knowing. Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut, very typical postmodern novel. French Lieutenant's Women by John Fowles, 1969. A Clockwise Orange by Anthony Burgess. Yeah, Catch 22 by Joseph Heller. Some of these, gist of some of these you can find in our YouTube channels also. Please go through. Gravity's Rainbow by Thomas Pynchon. Unbearable Light of Being by Milan Kundera, 1984. Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie. It has all the characteristics of postmodernism also. Waterland, a very iconic postmodern novel, Graham Swift. If on a Winter's Night a Traveler by 1979 by Italia Calvino. And there are many lists. Okay, I've selected some of the very famous one, and even 2011, as late as 2011, Julian Barnes' novel The Sense of an Ending. Yeah, in between we have writers like you take Cormac McCarthy's work, Philip Roth's work, and same way Ian McEwan's novel like Amsterdam, Saturday, or Atonement. Okay, even the current living writers of America and Europe. Okay, some of the techniques. Now, what are the characteristics of technique these postmodern writers they use? Yeah, so these are the very important 11 important techniques. Please remember, in addition to some of the iconic techniques of preceding modernism also you can find. For example, first one, irony, playfulness, black humor and pastiche. Intertextuality, you'll find most of the novel, right? Metafiction, historiographic metafiction, temporal distortion, paranoia, maximalism, faction, magic realism, right? I hope everyone must have heard of magic realism, right? Typical novels like Salman Rushdie's, Midnight Children, you can see participation, right? Participation. Today's modern novels are, asking the novelist is participating with the reader, okay? And readers are contributing. That's the way they write today. Hyper reality. Let's look at short gist of some of the characteristics. It is common for postmodern to treat serious subject in a playful and humorous way. Okay, for them nothing is serious, right? Got it? There is no serious. Everything they take it in a very humorous way. Even death. Yeah, they say that this the way you made it, right? They choose very serious subject like war and conspiracy theories and depict their histories ironically and humorously. Got it? You must have seen even some movies, no? Very, very even, the comedy would be there based on death. Got it? Like that. Traditionally, we are told, oh, death is a serious thing, great loss, etc., etc. Postmodernists say, no, nothing. Because you did nothing. They say that, basically, they say that, look at all your grand narratives, all your great book, they have destroyed the world only, right? You take all our canonical texts from Bible to Mahabharata to Ramayana. Have they stopped this degeneration of human beings? No, it has not stopped. First World War and Second World War, right? And if you know the horrors of World War I and II, then you will know the brutality of human nature, right? Got it? So, what is the use of those grand narratives when this is the human nature, right? They discuss taboo subject while adding an element of comedy in a non-serious way, dealing with a serious subject. Take, for example, Joseph Heller, Vonnegut, or Thomas Pynchon address the event of World War II. The concept of Joseph Heller catch-22, the irony of now idiomatic catch-22, and the narrative is structured around a long series of similar ironies, right? A typical characteristic we can see, right? So irony, playfulness, and dark humor. Pastiche. Many postmodern writers combine pastiche, that is elements of previous genre, style, and narratives, okay, into their own novels, and they comment. Take, for example, Thomas Pynchon, one of the very famous postmodern novelists. In his novel, you will find multiple, characteristics, or the, with, kind of a pastiche like detective fiction, science fiction, war fiction, song, pop culture, reference, well-known work, obscure fictional story, etc., etc. Right? Even in other novels, you'll find, right? It has come to that extent, the today novelists, they write a particular novel and they invite the reader. In between, you'll find newspaper articles. Rather, today's modern writers, you'll find even the writer would say that please take rest, read this next chapter after 1 month, go and listen to this YouTube channel, listen to my song, come back. It has come to that extent today. But still, we have not come to the extent of invisible work. Okay. Intertextuality. An important element of postmodernism is the acknowledgement of previous, literary work. Okay. Intertextuality. Metafiction. Many postmodern writers, they write in a metafiction. They say that it's a writing. What you are watching is you are reading a novel. They make you conscious that you are simply reading a novel, right? It is like telling that you are watching a movie. Don't be conscious, don't be sentimental, right? Okay, it is a fictionality, right? It is an artificial one. Okay, metafiction. Sometimes even within a novel, you might have a novel. Historiographic metafiction. When you mix history with a fiction. Look at, this term was coined by Linda Hutchinson in her famous essay, beginning to theorize in postmodern in 1987. She says that where you mix historical things with the reality, history with the fiction, you won't be able to differentiate what is history, what is reality. Take, for example, Thomas Pynchon's Mason and Dixon, for example, features a scene where George Washington smokes pot. Imagine writing a novel. You write a novel where Mahatma Gandhi comes and talks to you, and you take a historical event and convert it into, distort it with many things, right? And of course, in India, like country, it's very difficult. The one group would be always ready to fight. No, no, no. How can you show the historical figure like that? How can you show my God like that? Okay, that would be there. Temporal distortion, another characteristic. Temporal distortion is a literary technique that uses non-linear timer. Author jumps forward and backward, even past. Look at Ismail Reed's famous novel, Flight to Canada. Abraham Lincoln uses telephone. In this technique, frequently used in literature, even in films. As I told you, the example of that also. Paranoia. Many postmodern writers under the assumption that modernist society cannot be explained and understood, right? And they see society as a chaos, okay? And, and most of this dystopian work has the characteristics, right? Okay. What would happen? Either science or robots or AI would take over like that, okay? Maximalism, vilified by critics for being a term disorganized, sprawling, and very long. Okay, postmodern writers are very famous for writing long novels. Okay, like Odyssey, very famous one, David Foster Wallace and Thomas Pynchon, right? Where there's a lot of the novels are so big. Take, for example, Infinite Jest, written in 1996 by David Foster Wallace. It is so long, 1,000 pages. The novel touches on many topics, including addiction, recovery, suicide, family relationship, entertainment, advertising, film theory, United States-Canada relationship, and tennis. It has 388 endnotes, almost, 1,000-page novel. Okay, maximalism, right? Gravity's Rainbow, same way, another famous novel, right? New York Times described this novel like, the plot of a novel is complex, containing over 400 characters and involving many different threads of narrative. Okay, so Gravity's Rainbow, another famous novel. Next one, faction. Faction is similar to dystopic metafiction in that the subject material is based on actual event, but the writer and faction tend to blur the distinction between fact and fiction again. Yeah, right. So characteristics of metafiction, faction is you can't differentiate what is reality, what is fiction. So many postmodern novels have that characteristics. Magic realism, we already know what is magic realism, right? Arguably the most famous technique, right? Popularized by those South African, writers, got it? And later by many others, including Salman Rushdie's Midnight Children is a typical example of that. Introduction of fantastic and impossible event into, otherwise normal. Okay, right? So that is to magic realism, right? Popularized by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Participation, another characteristic. Many postmodern authors, as a response to modernism, frequently, they participate with the reader. Got it? And they ask the readers to tell the plot, right? Very famously, Game of Thrones writer. He interacts with the reader, how the characters would be, which character should die, how you want the plot to go, how the suspense should be there. Sometimes, he whatever the audience assume, the writers or the fan club, he changes that. So they interact frequently. Today they have their pages. Okay, right? I think famously he said that in Game of Thrones, people assume that a particular character would be the king. So he made the next book, he killed him. Got it? Like this, the participation with the reader. Got it? I think even Chetan Bhagat and others do that. Okay. So that's the one. Hyper reality, right? As John Baudelaire described, right? Hyper reality of one has become represented. What is reality and what is, yeah, with the advent of advertisement, films, etc., around 1970s and 80s, right? Baudelaire talked about, simulacra and simulation. So hyper reality is that where the reality is completely blurred. Yeah. So in that sense, postmodern writers use all these technique, right? So postmodernists, they don't, lament. Okay. Postmodernists, they celebrate this. Got it? Remember the word. Okay. They celebrate this fragmentation. They enjoy and they celebrate now, celebrate on the traditional sense. Celebrate now, they accept. Okay. போஸ்ட் மாடர்னிஸ்ட் வந்து மாடர்னிஸ்ட் மாதிரி கிரெஜ்ல இல்ல, நொஸ்டாலஜியால இல்ல, பாஸ்ட்ல இல்ல, கம்ப்ளைண்ட் பண்ணல, அக்செப்ட் பண்றாங்க, ரியாலிட்டி பண்றாங்க, அவ்வளவுதான். ஹியூமன் பீங் லைக் தட். ஓகே, எஸ், யூ ஃபாட் ஒன்ஸ், யூ கில்டு 1 crore people. World War II, you killed more than 2 crore people. A Holocaust happened, Hitler did this, Mussolini, this is the way we are worse than animal, that's it. And even after 1950 till today, world is going to become better. We are not going to fight. No, we are going to fight, and war will happen. War has been happening from Korean War to Vietnam War to Gulf War. இன்னைக்கு நம்ம பேசையில கூட வார் போயிட்டு இருக்கு. சரியா? இஸ்ரேல்ல வார் போயிட்டு இருக்கு, யுக்ரைன் போயிட்டு. ஹியூமன் நேச்சர் இப்படிதான் இருந்திருக்கும். We are brute only. Let's accept, let's celebrate this. Yeah. So they don't go like, a modernist writer or like Victorian writer, nostalgia, past. No. So they celebrate this fragmentation. They celebrate all the characteristics. There's no place for nostalgia, regret. Yeah. And they want the people to be that. There's no use in complaining or visualizing, right? All those people have no, oh, life once நல்லா இருந்துச்சு, ஃபேமிலி நல்லா இருந்துச்சு, அந்த காலத்துல வாழ்க்கை எப்படி இருந்துச்சு, தாத்தா காலத்துல எப்படி இருந்துச்சுல. And this is the way the movies are promoted, right? Got it? Yeah, got it. And there are movies and films which always promote such, nonsensical ideas, right? Dreamy world la kondu povanga, right? Because they don't want to face the reality, right? Recently, someone I watched this, yeah, I had some glimpses of this, watching this Arvind Swamy and some, some Tamil movie with that, Surya's brother. Again, that kind of a romantic idea. Who the hell thinks like that today? I don't know what type of movie they make, right? Yeah, that man is thinking about the past, that, okay, the time has changed. Got it? Again, so these people are living and they still visualize those time. Got it? When they did not have telephone, they wanted telephone. Oh, if I had phone, I would communicate. Today, they would say, no, 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 I don't want phone. I want the serene time. I would write a letter. I would live that peaceful in a village, in a river by with a goat and a, farmhouse. Yeah. Or because these kind of literature, films, and other things have romanticized this, right? So postmodernists say that no, there's no place for that. Got it? Let's accept this. and don't glorify the human nature which has been propagated, because human nature was not like that. What we see the reality, this is thus postmodernism is just another distinct historical period. It marks some changes characterized by all this happened in the last 70 years. So, and we can see postmodernism still a dominant force and continues to have a great influence on all the intellectual activities and the writings, right? It has come to that, at least, 1970s, a postmodern novel has come. Okay, I think the unfortunate but B.H. Johnson, where he said, I am writing a novel. You take it whatever you want. Read the first chapter as it is, second chapter, and to last chapter, read the way you want it. So that is called novel in a box. Okay. Last and first chapters. So novel box la varum. Pages were all empty. You can read the way you want it. Yeah. It's like a chef, like a cafeteria. You can take it. That was the one of the innovative novels, 1960s B.H. Johnson's Unfortunate. So yeah, that was a very radical novel. Got it? So in this way, it has impacted, and still today you can see all the characteristics. Right? You read, a current trend, you can read Philip Roth's novel, Cormac McCarthy, who recently died, or even Ian McEwan's novel, or Julian Barnes' novel. Right? You can see how they add different characteristics. And but all of them, they challenge that universal coherence. What the traditionally they describe. They say that this is not like that. Okay. Okay then. So thank you.